Fallout 76 just got one of its biggest, and I think you could actually extend that to also make the argument for one of the best updates thus far. Even though previous updates might have brought more changes to the game, I would argue the quality of changes we see with this present one is pretty much unparalleled. There's a lot of really good stuff that I'm going to go through in this video. And for that reason, I'm going to have timestamps down below. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. One of the big new additions with this update is the brand new questline, known as Shear Terror or Lying Low. This is the questline you probably saw teased in this trailer that adds in finding the sheep squatch, and we're going to discuss a little bit about what this is and how big of an update that part is. Although, to go along with this, we also saw the addition of Patch 8 that brought many other changes to other aspects of the game, even some of the previously added DLC modes. You might have noticed, despite this update being pretty much the biggest content update we've seen to the game thus far, the actual download size isn't the largest at just 6 gigabytes. That being for consoles, and on PC it's only 2 gigabytes. The big reason being that one of the previous updates laid the groundwork for this one, adding in a lot of the world space and different cells. That previous 20 gigabyte update really carried the bulk of the load. This one just has some of the extras. Although only just today we're getting the ability to access a lot of this new content. So this video is not going to be a comprehensive look at the new questline. I'm going to have a secondary video tomorrow going way more in depth with it. There's simply way too many details to try and contain it with all the rest of the patch notes, which there's a lot of other cool changes. So view this more as a first impressions and what you could kind of expect going into it. So the new questline, known as Lying Low, will be kicked off when you find one of these posters or actually purchase one in the Atomic Shop for free and place it down at your camp or something. From there, you're going to be on the journey of finding out what happened to Shelley Van Lowe's brother named Calvin. There are multiple quests involved with this. The storytelling is mostly done through holotapes or terminal entries, and it really is a mystery. As you go from location to location and finish each subsequent quest, you're going to get a little bit closer or find out a little bit more, a few more answers to questions that probably arose from the last segment. I think Bethesda really tried to make this a mystery, as a lot of the quest gameplay involves that thing where it's like, alright, the quest item is in this general area, now look through the area and eventually find it. Some of these areas are 3 or 4 story buildings, so you could spend quite a while looking for things. I've definitely seen several people getting stuck on certain segments and having to genuinely try and find them. So if you're into that kind of thing, you probably will really like this. And I really got sucked into this quest. I wanted to see what was going to happen next, but if you're not a huge fan of that passive storytelling, you might not love this one, because that's a good chunk of it. It's just listening or reading, taking in the story rather than being an active player in it. You're just connecting dots that were kind of already there. Although one thing you will notice, this quest has an interesting ending, as it's very similar to the Scorched Beast Queen event. If you're just playing Fallout 76 now, you might notice the encrypted event start on your server, as everyone is alerted when this begins. This is the ending to at least part of this questline, and in effect, you're going to have to take down the Sheep Squatch imposter. It is basically an Assaultron with a modified head. So it might be slightly biased because it only just came out, but this event feels a lot harder than the Scorched Beast Queen event. The Assaultron himself actually one-shots almost everybody, but it's another one of those events that really brings the community together. You have to work together to kill this thing, and it's not easy to kill. I've only seen a few people successfully do it. And from this, you could actually get some rare, unique rewards. We've seen several of these through data mining, as well as actually doing some of the quests. You can also get other unique things, like a pair of binoculars that looks different and will actually highlight enemies, although it doesn't zoom any further than this, so they're only kinda useful. One other cool part is there isn't just a main quest line, there's actually side quests also. These are much smaller and contain stories told in a similar fashion through holotapes and notes. It takes you to a few locations, and it typically is mystery oriented, trying to figure out what happened to a certain person. Although one of the cool parts is a lot of the characters from these are involved either in the main quest or vice versa. There's a lot of overlap between, so you'll see a character in the main quest, then hear more about them through this quest. So these basically give a bit more backstory to the main quest. Although it seems like there's actually a decent chunk of this new Lying Low questline that has yet to be discovered. There is a good few hours of content here, so this is just my first impressions. If you like some of the stuff I described, then yeah, give this a go. You'll probably have fun finding out the story or what happened to Calvin. But if you're looking for something that was really gameplay heavy or giving you totally new opportunities, this might not be the questline for you. Maybe check out some of the new survival changes that I'll be talking about in a moment. With this, we also got several new additions to the Atomic Shop. Some Some of these are decent, you know, they look as they do, but some of them are actually really cool, like this power armor paint job. This is coming in at 1,000 points, which is kind of pricey. That's $10 in real life if you were to buy points with cash, but at the same time, it looks cool. And I think this is one of the first things I could see a lot of people wanting to spend money on. Bethesda has also mentioned that come next Tuesday, we're actually getting the Burrows. This is going to be a new dungeon under Harper's Ferry that's going to be high level and difficult. It's meant to be done with a squad of high level players, and hopefully we'll have some good rewards as a result. And for those of you curious about what's going on like under Arctos Labs, how do you get access to that, or how do you get access to the secret vault? As of right now, not a ton has been found. Technically, the sheep squatch hasn't even been found yet, or at least I haven't seen a confirmed sighting just yet. It seems as if there's still a lot more to uncover with this DLC, so I think with time we will find out a lot more. Although shortly after this went live, people did start uncovering some of the bugs that were added in. It seems like the friends list is back to the old way it was sorted, which is kind of out of order, not just everyone online at the top. Some of the pricing was actually changed on various items, so how much you could sell it for, some of them getting pretty big nerfs. And I've personally actually been experiencing a ton of stuttering following this update. I'm not sure if it's specific to my system, I haven't changed anything else. And I haven't seen a ton of other people reporting this, but it's just in Fallout 76 and it's just following this update. I was playing the game normally last night. Although with that in mind, even though I think the main appeal of this update was the new questline, that's what people were excited for, some of the other changes brought to the table with patch 8 could also get you reinterested in this game. One minor one that you're going to notice pretty quickly is now when you log in, there's a little news screen that shows you some of the latest happenings, making my job a little bit less relevant. We got some really big changes to the recently added survival mode, and these might be ones that actually get you to experiment or test out that mode again. Now in survival mode, you're actually going to drop less 8 items on death. When you die in this mode, you drop a random amount of the 8 items you have, and it seems like Bethesda lowered that range. We don't know exact numbers, but let's just say in the past you would drop 10% of your items to 70% of your items. Well, now it might be more like 10 to 30 or 40%, but again, they don't actually give us the exact numbers. And then one of the most profound changes is the number of caps you lose on death. Previously, when you died, you lost caps equal to double your level. So if you're level 20, you lost 40 caps. Now they changed it to just 25% of your level. So if you're level 20 and are killed, you'll lose 5 caps and the killer will gain 5 caps. They also changed who we actually see on the map. Previously, we saw the 3 players that had been alive for the longest in their given life. Now it's going to be the 3 players that have the most kills in their given life. So overall, I would say these changes make survival mode a lot more easier and a lot more approachable. You just jumping into the mode with one of your characters, there's not nearly as much consequence. You won't lose as much aid, you won't lose as many caps, but it will probably incentivize people to engage in PvP combat a lot more often. Naturally, making your survival mode easier won't appeal to everyone, but I'm reserved about these changes. I'm not sure if they're positive or negative yet, and I think I just have to do further testing. Although I would say the map change with the people that have the most kills now appearing there is definitely a good one. One of the other fairly large-scale balance changes you will see following this update is the vendor changes. Now when you travel to the White Springs Resort and go into the basement area, you're going to see vendors from every single faction. They did this in kind of an interesting way because the vendors are in the same shops that were already there. So in a lot of these now, there's the regular vendor, as it always has been, and just like a second one from the responders standing there awkwardly. Outside of that, within these vendors, they actually are now going to have a pool of caps. Previously, the way it worked was, as long as vendors were of the same faction, they shared a cap pool, and each of the 7 factions got 200 caps. Now they simplified it, making it so if you see another vendor, they will have a pool of 1,400 caps between all of the vendors on a server. And this pool of caps is going to reset every 20 hours. And this is actually a pretty big quality of life change. I oftentimes will get a bunch of caps by selling to vendors, and now just being able to go to one and dump off a bunch of items I don't want, rather than having to jump around to get all of the caps for a given day, is going to be a lot nicer. It's going to save me a lot of time that otherwise would have been spent in load screens. Those were the other 2 larger changes, but we also got some other miscellaneous changes. Not quite as large, but still pretty profound. They will, without a doubt, affect your game. Turrets that you place in your camp or along your workshops actually got pretty big changes. They saw a base increase in damage depending on the turret type. some getting just 15%, other ones getting a 100% damage increase or doubling their damage. They also saw a range increase, so overall they're going to be shooting farther and doing more damage. But as a result of this, they also are now going to abide by the damage scaling system. In Fallout 76, your damage output is normalized based on your level. So let's say you're a low level player attacking a high level player, your damage will be increased. If you're a high level player attacking a low level player, your damage will be decreased. These same rules will now apply to your turrets. So if I'm very high level and my turret starts attacking somebody that's low level, the damage of my turrets will be reduced according to the level difference. And it's the opposite if somebody's a higher level for me. My turrets will deal increased damage. In practice, as I mentioned before, this makes turrets a lot more formidable, even against other NPCs, but also against other players. Having a good turret defense is actually now a lot more relevant than it was previously. A huge quality of life change, now VATS will no longer target friendly or neutral players or creatures. This one's pretty big. There are a lot of times where if you're playing in a group of people, an enemy will pop up in front of you, and as you go to use VATS on it, instead of focusing on the enemy, it'll focus on the person standing next to you, even though they're neutral and the enemy is hostile. You can now rename your items. This is cool, is just to add a personal touch to weapons and armors, but it's particularly useful when renaming power armor chassis. So now in your inventory, you can quickly see which power armor is on that chassis. You can do this to pretty much every kind of armor or weapon. The only excluded are things that stack, so like throwing knives, grenades. Although when you trade these to another player, the name will be reset, and you also have the option to reset the name yourself. They made some changes to food spoilage in this game. Following the addition of Biv and the Nukashan questline, we also saw a pretty big change in the rate that food spoils. In the patch notes, all we get is the rate at which food spoils is more consistent, but there's a couple of interesting things around this. First and foremost, a lot of people thought this was an accidental change, yet in the present patch notes, it's actually regarded as a balance change. Although experiencing this in-game, it certainly feels like things are better, but not back to how they used to be. I don't have the exact data or numbers, but just based off my own perception, it feels like food spoils faster than it did a month ago, but slower than it did yesterday before this update. Hopefully though, through data mining and things like that, we could see what exactly was changed behind the scenes. With the announcement of those recent repair kits, Bethesda also mentioned they might be adding refrigerators to this game. A lot of people are speculating this was a change made to sell more refrigerators. As the repair kits are in the Atomic Shop, people thought maybe the refrigerators will be in the Atomic Shop. We'll see what kind of effect this most recent change has on that speculation. One pretty interesting change you will definitely notice, you can no longer use quick loot on your stash. So previously, as you walked up to your stash, you would be able to quickly loot things without opening up the menu. Now you could no longer do that. You have to fully open up the menu and go through the regular transfer screen. So when I first read this, I was kind of like, what? Why would you do that? Bethesda does add a dev note onto this saying that it's a lot easier to cycle through a lot of items through the transfer screen, not the little quick loot screen, and even further, it does afford them a small performance increase. And I think that makes a lot more sense. The quick loot system isn't really built to handle potentially 800 pounds of items at a given time. And without a doubt, one of the best changes coming with this most recent update, the Connect is no longer a voice option. They just removed it completely. And hey, I'm on board with this one. Might be time to reinstall Fallout 76, boys. So all in all, I would say this is probably one of the best updates we've ever gotten for Fallout 4. Even if that main batch of new content or the quest really wasn't your cup of tea, there's a lot more than that. A lot of other really welcomed balance changes and even improvements to survival mode that I bet will get a lot more people to try it. And another server-wide event I think is going to be pretty cool. People are going to be consistently doing that, trying to farm the rewards that you can get from it. All in all, I would say this is definitely a win for Bethesda, and I'm pretty excited to see what they have in store for their next major update with the next quest line.